Hi guys, I'm Jay and you're watching the UFC Fight Prediction channel. I've been following this sport for over 15 years and have been training sporadically for about the same time. And I have gathered some really good pointers for fight predictions, which have helped me gain huge profits on. So I thought it would be a good idea to share my learnings with you so that you and I can make money together. On this channel, we will be doing is analyzing UFC fight cards, see how the fighter styles match up against each other, what are some of the X factors that are expected to have impact on the fights, and we will evaluate betting odds individually and see how we can utilize straight bets, parlays, fight outcome specific or round specific bets on these UFC fights. This is my first video, so I'm really excited to see what you think about my predictions. You're very welcome to drop in comments or criticisms. Happy to have a chat with you there. What I want to point out, these views that I'm going to provide in this video are my opinions based on a bunch of fights that I watched on these fighters. However, in order for you to have 100% buy-in, you must do your own research before you commit to any bets. These pointers are also expected to help you tremendously in the live betting, so please don't forget about them once you're watching the fight. Without further ado, let's hop on to my first card on this channel, which is going to be Frankie Edgar versus Pedro Munhoz. So let's hop onto it. Okay, so the next fight on the card is Carlton Minus versus Matt Semmelsberger. The most important things that jumped out to me was the level of competition that these two have. Carlton, I think, owns a record of 10-1, while Matt owns a record of 6-2. The level of competition Matt has faced is much inferior as compared to Clutch. Clutch has faced Rick Story. He lost that fight, but it was still a good battle. And then he won a fight against Justin Buchloz. Clutch is an orthodox fighter who relies on his 1-2 combinations, primarily his jab, and he has some good kicks too, but it's his jab, and he follows it with a great hook. Hook says he does not rely on takedowns. He likes to keep his distance using jabs. And he's typically a point fighter who likes to maintain distance, especially when he tastes the other person's power. He doesn't like he has also shown on instances where he would retaliate after getting hit, but I feel that if he has a power disadvantage in any fight, he sticks to his point fighting. In the case of Semi, he is probably 6'1", huge for the weight class. He has also fought at middleweight, so he's definitely going to have a size and a power advantage over Clutch. Semi has shown some crisp striking in his last fight in February and landed a big flying knee on his opponent and then finished him off with a devastating elbow. So, with the limited tape that we have on those two fighters, I feel that Clutch is going to be the more experienced fighter here, and he will try to avoid banging with Semi. Semi definitely has the firepower to close the show on Clutch, but I believe Clutch will start point fighting the moment he tastes Semi's power. My prediction, Carlton Minus, wire decision. Next, we're going to talk about John Wright versus Ike Villanueva. And John Wright accepted this fight 2 or 3 days ago, so he is turning on a short notice fight, even though it might be a short notice fight for Ike Villanueva, but he probably had a little more time to prepare. And when the last opponent, Jorge Gonzalez, pulled out, that's when John Wright stepped in. Now, let's talk about Villanueva first. So this guy has fought at middleweight, light heavyweight, and heavyweight in the last couple of years. His last fight was with the UFC at heavyweight division against Chase Sherman. Ike Villanueva ended up being outclassed in this fight, getting TKO'd in the second. He showed good boxing and he got some good blows on Chase Sherman in the beginning, but couldn't keep up. He has fairly crisp boxing, throws really nice 1-2, and has a mean body hook. He primarily fights in the orthodox stance, and what I believe is if he gets down to light heavyweight or middleweight, that might be a better situation. That might be a better weight class with him, where he would have similar sized opponents rather than Chase Sherman, who's 6'4" and giant of a man. This fight is happening at light heavyweight, so that might be good for Ike Villanueva. And he's got okay takedown defense, nothing crazy. But I think he has enough weight on John Wright that John Wright might not be able to take him down. Another thing I wanted to point out was that he has decent cardio for such a big man. Now talking about John Wright. So John Wright has a conventional martial arts background where he starts a typical karate-like bouncy style. And I believe he's also really good in jiu-jitsu. Tall guy, but he fights at middleweight. He's probably around 6'1", 6'2". So, height-wise, they would probably be similar. The level of competition that Villanueva has faced is much better than what John Wright has. John Wright tries to kick you from a distance and then take you down and submit you. That's been the modus operandi of Jordan Wright in the last few fights. However, with the weight differential significantly favoring Ike Villanueva, takedowns might be hard to achieve. And I also believe that Wright needs a lot of space in order to be effective. And I believe Ike Villanueva is not going to give him that space, and is going to be in his space and box where Wright cannot use his kicks. So, summing it up, I probably go with Ike Villanueva considering the experience he has, the weight advantage he has, and he's taken power shots from much bigger men and he's been fine. And I think he'll be able to take Jordan Wright's shots easily. However, Jordan Wright hasn't fought a lot of fights on light heavyweight, and I think Ike Villanueva's power will be the difference in this fight, and he's going to win by a finish, probably a TKO. So the next fight is one that I'm really excited about, and it should be a back and forth battle for most part, in my opinion. So this is Joe Solecki versus Austin Hubbard. Now, Austin Hubbard has faced stellar grapplers throughout his UFC career, and I think he's been kind of unlucky to face Davi Ramos, who is a stellar BJJ guy, has like a bunch of tournament wins in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. And then he fought Marco Madsen, who's a Danish Olympic wrestling silver medalist in Greco-Roman, who has like crazy body lock takedowns, gorilla strength. And Austin was able to somewhat hold their own and come back in the third round, especially against Marco Madsen. So what tells me about Austin Hubbard is he's a very tough guy. He has good, crisp strikes. He has this never say die attitude, and he'll keep coming for you until you finish him. And it's really hard to finish him. If Austin resists Joe's takedown a few times, Hubbard might be able to exhaust Joe Solecki, even though Joe Solecki has not shown evidence of tiring in his recent fight. Austin Hubbard can be a little passive against strong grappling credentials until he knows that the grappler is tired enough. He tends to remain in a shell, and that could hamper his chances against Joe Solecki. He has a nice knee up the middle that might work really well against any wrestlers, including Joe Solecki. Now, going to Joe Solecki, he has really high grappling credentials. He's been a part of grappling competitions and competed with, great jiu-jitsu guys under John Danaher, such as Gary Tonin and so on. He's not just technical. I think he has a lot of strength too. His physique and his wrestling looks really good, so he can take you down and keep you down and control you down. He had his first fight against Matt Wyman in the UFC, and he completely dominated Matt Wyman for full 15 minutes. He has great takedown awareness. He attacks with takedowns when the other people are punching, and his timing is really good. He takes people down when they throw a kick and has a really good top control. He's very clever in terms of passing his guard too. He only passes guard when the opponent is trying to move and wriggle away, and that gives him the opportunity to progress his control when he's on top. He has really good ground and pound, and he manages energy really well. And I think that particular quality makes me think that he will be able to handle the pressure from Austin Hubbard coming late in the third. One thing which I think is the X factor in this fight is the high fight IQ of Joe Solecki. He fights, his entries for takedown is very smart. He gives a false sense of confidence to the opponent, and when the opponent gets a little comfortable and forgets about the takedown, that's when he changes levels and goes for the takedown, and his takedowns and control is suffocating. He has a really good submission game. Austin Hubbard has resisted submissions against very high-level grapplers, so I'm not sure if Solecki will be able to submit him, but he will definitely be able to control Austin for some period of time. Anyway, in summarizing, it could go either way. Hubbard has fought elite grapplers. He was out-grappled, but he never conceded defeat against anyone. For Hubbard, trouble is that Joe Solecki is top-rated jiu-jitsu guy who has high fight IQ and who shoots for double legs with impeccable timing and retains control for extended periods of time. Now, he has shown to have a good cardio, but you never know how the cardio behaves when things don't go your way. Solecki has a third-round TKO loss 5 fights ago, and that could have been to exhaustion, but I wasn't able to find footage on that, so it still remains to be seen. Again, what I feel is Joe Solecki will dominate at least two rounds, the first 2 rounds, to win a close decision. He might completely shut out Hubbard, or Hubbard may be able to tire him out in the first 2 rounds to win the third round. All in all, I feel Joe Solecki is going to take this one via decision. Okay, this next one is between Mizuki Inoue versus Amanda Lemos. Now, this fight is very exciting to me. There are a lot of unknowns in the fight, and I think this is a fight that is best for live betting and not pre-fight betting. First, we'll start with talking about Mizuki and Lemos, and then I will discuss why it is a better live betting fight. Now, Mizuki is a pressure fighter with great cardio. She presses forward. She doesn't throw crazy strikes, but she still will throw a lot of volume at you. Not a lot of pop on those punches, but still they'll be stinging you. She throws a very strong overhand right. She displays a lot of movement from side to side. She feints and fakes a lot and utilizes head movement while she's coming in. She usually utilizes body lock or trip takedowns in case she wants to engage in grappling. She has a good defensive and offensive guard game, and she would throw her legs, eyeing arm bars and triangle chokes pretty well. She also has a fair bit of experience advantage over Lemos, and Mizuki has had close to 20 fights, wherein Lemos has had 8 fights so far. Now, coming to Lemos, I was extremely impressed by Lemos's last performance, which was at strawweight, which is 115 pounds. Before that, Lemos has been competing in 135 pounds, which is the bantamweight, or 2 weight classes above. And for her 5'4" frame, bantamweight did not suit her well. She's an orthodox striker who has a reputation of being a fast starter. But with that fast start, she's known to gas pretty quickly too. She's finished 5 out of her 6 wins, and they all have come in the first round. She switches stances occasionally, gets a good trip takedowns. And with her fight against Leslie Smith, who is a 5'9" bantamweight, she was able to dominate her with the striking exchanges in the first round. It was crazy for me to see how much stronger Lemos's strikes were as compared to Leslie Smith's, and that's what I think could make a difference here. The power of Lemos is something to behold. However, what bothers me about Lemos is her cardio and her shot selections, especially when she's tired. So this was true at bantamweight, where Lemos got tired by the end of first round, and in the second round she was pretty much a sitting duck for Leslie Smith, and Leslie Smith was able to get a standing TKO on her. Now there is definitely a possibility that Amanda Lemos could have fixed that, but cardio issues usually take longer to fix than this duration. So it's still to be seen. Personally, I think Lemos has way more pop and strikes and has better ground game than Mizuki, but historically has gassed out in the first round, which adds the element of uncertainty in the fight. The odds for this fight is for Mizuki is around minus 150, and Amanda Lemos at 125. And I kind of agree with the fact that Mizuki has a great cardio, has a lot of, moves a lot, and has a lot of experience to leverage on in case she meets adversity in the first round. So I would agree with the odds, just that Lemos's power is something to behold, and anything can happen in the first round is something that adds more uncertainty to it. In summary, Lemos will probably come on strong after a minute or two of analyzing Inoue's movement and her overall game. She is probably going to hurt Inoue or take her down in the first round and dominate. However, with Mizuki's increased pressure and experienced approach in the second, Lemos will start getting started in the second, and Mizuki will take over in the third. I see it as a close decision by Mizuki, but I wouldn't be surprised if Mizuki gets knocked out in the first. If I have to bet on this fight, I would probably wait for the live betting to see how it's trending, or bet on Lemos knocking out Mizuki in the first, which is a high reward and a high risk bet. So you can put a small amount there. Okay, now we go to the showcase fight of the prelims between Maria Agapova and Shayna Dobson. It is more or less a promotional fight for Maria Agapova to showcase her striking proficiency. We'll talk about Maria first. She's a Kazakh national boxing champion, and she hits hard. She is an extremely aggressive fighter who hits great combinations and hits really hard. I think she's had only one fight in the UFC so far against Hannah Cifers, and Hannah Cifers is a tough girl. She's only been finished before she fought Maria Agapova, and Agapova finished her off early in the first round by a head kick and a series of punches after. She has nice shoulder rolls. She can actually protect herself from big punches just by shoulder movements as a seasoned boxer would. I think this is a setup fight for Maria Agapova to show her talents, because Shayna Dobson, even though she's shown some toughness here and there, I do not think that she's in the same level. We haven't seen the progression after Ultimate Fighter, which she was a part of, I think, a couple of years ago. She was knocked out in her last fight by Priscilla Cachoeira, and Priscilla Cachoeira fights in a very aggressive, you hit me, I hit you style, going bonkers, and she got hit. I do not feel that she has the requisite tool set in order to defend herself against Maria Agapova. If you look at the betting odds, you will realize why. So Maria Agapova comes in at minus 1200, wherein Shayna Dobson comes in around plus 750, which typically means that Maria is the odd makers give Maria over 90% chance to win this one. I wouldn't necessarily deny that. It's just that when the odds are so stacked, it kind of takes away from the betting opportunity. I might go for Maria Agapova by knockout as my bet, which is going around minus 350, and parlay it with one or two of the other more options. The first fight of the main card, which is Takashi Sato versus Daniel Rodriguez. First, we'll talk about Takashi Sato, who's a southpaw fighter. He's a second-degree judo black belt. He uses his judo skills to defend takedowns and flip or reverse you in mid-takedown to land on top. He has a karate jumping hopping stance, which is not very squared. He stands in a fairly sideways stance, and he has a really solid jab and a left straight. And the best part about his striking is he throws it without telegraphing. He also throws volume is missing. He lands around 3 to 4 strikes a minute, which is not especially high considering the times in MMA. Overall, his work rate for punches is lower than Daniel Rodriguez, as we pointed out. He has a really good chin, and he can take punches pretty well. He does not throw a lot of... Takashi Sato can be taken down through well-timed takedowns, and this was displayed in the Belal Muhammad fight, where Belal Muhammad ended up submitting Takashi Sato, even though I don't foresee Daniel Rodriguez taking him down. Daniel Rodriguez will only deploy his grappling, which I think is much superior than Takashi Sato's, even if Takashi Sato decides to take him down. One of the worrying points about Takashi Sato is that he exits with his chin high sometimes, and that is something where Daniel Rodriguez can exploit the situation. Now, I saw Daniel Rodriguez first when he debuted as a short notice fight with Tim Means a few months ago, and I was so impressed. I was riding high on the Tim Means bandwagon, and what I was impressed with Daniel Rodriguez was how calm he was in the octagon in his debut. He's a very patient fighter, and he picks his opportunities very, very carefully. Even if you are throwing fire at him, he will just evade those punches and then hit you precisely. It's something like... and I don't want to overstate it in any way, but it's reminiscent of a fighter like Israel Adesanya and Anderson Silva, even though Daniel Rodriguez's precision and the movements are not as crisp, but he follows a similar trait of watching the opponent till the end before he strikes, and that's what increases his accuracy. Daniel Rodriguez has sound defense, has really good movement side to side, and he always keeps his hands high. He has a really good ground game. We haven't had an opportunity to see that in the octagon, but he did display it when Tim Means got hurt and tried to take him down. Daniel Rodriguez clamped up a really nice, it was a power guillotine, and he was able to put his stamp on it. I'm not sure if I mentioned, he's also a southpaw, so this is going to be a southpaw versus southpaw battle, and that opens up the outside low calf kick for Daniel Rodriguez. And that can hamper the mobility of Takashi Sato. D-Rod also has a crisp body kick, but might not be a big factor, again, because of the fact that Takashi Sato is also southpaw. The back kick is extremely useful if the fighters are in opposite stances. Daniel Rodriguez is comfortable in the clinch, and he fights really well going backwards, better than most fighters I've seen. So I feel that even though Takashi Sato is not going to press Daniel Rodriguez, he does not have the volume to press him. But Daniel Rodriguez, even if moving backwards, can be extremely effective. And this is something that I feel is true for Dominic Reyes, and that's how he was able to do so well against John Jones. So overall, even though Takashi Sato has very good 1-2, Daniel Rodriguez's striking is probably at a much higher level. And he has more options to hurt Takashi Sato than otherwise. He throws powerful hooks and remains calm even under pressure. Sato is not going to pressure him in the same way as Gabe Green or Tim Means did. And I see Daniel Rodriguez outpointing Sato unless Sato really presses him and gets in a firefight where Sato could be knocked out or gets in a guillotine. I would see this going to a decision unless something crazy happens. So my pick, Daniel Rodriguez by decision. The next one in the main card, which is Mike Rodriguez versus Marcin Prachnio. Talking about Mike Rodriguez, who's a Contender Series alum, he has a mixed showing. He knocked out Adam Milstead in the first round, but then lost to Korean newcomer through a first round loss. And then he had a decision loss to Alan Johns, but that decision was overturned later on as the Brazilian popped for steroids. Mike Rodriguez is essentially a really long guy, standing around 6'4", 6'5". He's very explosive and has long 80-inch reach. Now, he can definitely utilize his reach in this fight. He has strong leg kicks, and he throws powerful knees in the middle. So anyone who tries to shoot on him will have to worry about those knees coming towards them, and he can definitely raise those knees to a fair height. Mike Rodriguez throws good combinations, has a strong body kick, has an effective teep kick to create distance between him and the opponent. Like many inexperienced explosive fighters, he does have a hard time keeping the distance, and when he's attacking and throwing punches, he tends to crash into the opponent, and the opponent a chance to grab onto him, getting into clinch and takedowns, which is not good for Mike Rodriguez. Takedown defense is not up to the mark, but he scrambles next to the cage pretty well. He's definitely getting better as he progresses down his UFC career. He can be held against the cage, and sometimes he doesn't show the same kind of urgency to get up that he displays certain times. And this could be a cardio issue as well. So Devin Clark was able to hold him to the cage and tire him out in the third round. This is something that Mike Rodriguez needs work on, that is takedown defense. If he's taken down, then getting back to his feet where he can leverage his range and shots. His opponent, Marcin Prachnio, He's a Polish guy, and he came to the UFC in 2017 as a promising prospect from there, but he did not perform up to his expectations. He had 2 back-to-back losses, one with Sam Alvey in the first round and then Muhammad Ankalaev. The troubling part was that he looked extremely jittery in there. He looked as someone who has not faced this kind of competition before. His reaction to getting punched, having that wide-eyed look and just not feeling confident was something that caught my eye. Since then, getting knocked out by Ankalaev in 2018, he's on a 2-year layoff due to some injuries and the pandemic situation. So we don't know how much training, development he's had during the last 2 years. Now, he could be a completely changed fighter with a different mental outlook that blows away Mike Rodriguez, or he could be one of those fighters who come to the octagon after 2-year layoff and show all the ring rust, as something like Fabricio Werdum before he bounced back in his second fight after the layoff. So these are some of the things that we need to keep in mind while we are betting on this fight. In my opinion, Marcin Prichnio will come out fast off the blocks, but Mike Rodriguez will try to utilize his reach and straight shots to stun Prichnio and go for a ground and pound finish for a TKO early in the fight. Looking at the odds, Mike Rodriguez comes in as minus 225 favorite, which sounds about right, even though he isn't a proven commodity. But Marcin Prichnio in the UFC has looked very, very ordinary, so I can understand where the odd makers are coming from. So my pick, Mike Rodriguez by TKO for this one. Guys, now the co-main event, which is between Alonzo Menifield and Owen St. Preux. I don't know why this fight as the co-main event, because skill-wise, it's not up there. I expect UFC to put better skill opposition. In terms of interesting, it could be a really, really interesting fight, especially if it ends in the first round. Let's talk about Alonzo Menifield first. This guy is fairly young in his UFC career. He's probably had 10, 11 fights with 1 loss in his last fight, where he was out-wrestled by Devin Clark. He hit Devin Clark pretty well in the first round, but couldn't capitalize. Devin Clark used his experience to grind out a decision. So that was his first loss. In a lot of ways, that was kind of an eye-opener. But Alonzo Menifield hits super hard. He touches people and their lights go out. Like, he has this unique fight-changing power. However, he's throwing punches with malicious intent, full swings. And usually what happens is people get really tired really quickly when they deploy this kind of a style. Another good thing about Alonzo Menifield is he capitalizes on mistakes of his opponents. So both the knockouts that he got in the UFC, one was Paul Craig fight, the other one was Vinicius Moreira fight. In both those fights, those fighters tried spinning back fist or spinning back kick on Alonzo, and they missed. And Alonzo capitalized them with a hard, loopy hook that shut their lights out. So you wouldn't want to be in a compromising position with Alonzo Menifield, because chances are he'll knock you out. He also has really good takedown defense. However, he tends to spend a lot of energy doing it, and we've seen him getting tired after that. Another good thing about Alonzo Menifield is that he listens to his coaches. I have seen multiple times that Alonzo will do exactly how his coaches would ask him to do. There are definitely some good points about this fighter, and if he is learned from his last fight, he would probably manage his cardio better than the last time. Now, talking about OSP. OSP is a southpaw fighter who switches stances. He's an extremely big guy for a light heavyweight. He's coming back from a one-off stint at a heavyweight where he collided with Ben Rothwell, and I think OSP got robbed in that fight. In the last 5 years, and this is one of the X factors, OSP hasn't been finished early except for being submitted by Ilir Latifi in the first round. Otherwise, all the times he's been finished has always been in round 2 or 3, mostly in round 3. That usually happens when OSP loses his steam. He gets tired, and that's when he's more vulnerable to getting knocked out. OSP has had his own trouble with cardio, and in some fights it's way more evident than the others. I believe wrestling saps him out. So in this fight, I believe OSP is going to come with a clinch-heavy game plan and will try to tire Alonso out. Alonso's arms are filled with lactic acid and his punches don't come out as fast. So I think that would be OSP's strategy. OSP gets hurt initially and then he kind of rallies around that, tries to win his fights. In summary, Alonso Menifield will come out strong. He might hurt OSP too, because Alonso would have learned from a mistake. With all the muscle that he carries, it's only a matter of time when he gets tired. OSP is also a veteran, and I expect him to ride out the first round to impose his will later in the fight. So there are only 2 ways that this fight can go. One, Alonso Menifield finishes the fight early through a knockout in the first round, or if it reaches the second or the third round, OSP will grind out a decision or finish Menifield late in the round. The odds, OSP is plus 110. Alonso Menifield is minus 138. And I'm kind of surprised that Alonso comes in as a slight favorite. I would probably put some money on Alonso by knockout in the first, which will give you huge returns because we are betting really specific here. Or I will just bet straight OSP, considering the fact that he's a slight underdog. He can use his experience to gas out Alonso and win this bout. Now the big one, the main event, Munhoz versus Edgar. We're going to focus on Pedro Munhoz first. So Pedro Munhoz has great punching power and an elite BJJ game. What that means is he can throw punches with full power and recklessly without having to worry about being taken to the ground for the most part. Another reason a lot of fighters are hesitant in shooting double legs on Pedro Munhoz is his guillotine that he just clamps onto when somebody tries to take him down. Another important point for this fight is Pedro Munhoz's leg kick. He throws solid low calf kicks that had impact in the Cody fight. Once Cody got hit a couple of times on his calf, he got into the crazy berserker mode, which led to Cody's knockout later on. He also utilized it really well in Aljamain Sterling's fight. So we've seen that he uses that pretty effectively, and I think with Frankie Edgar, this is going to be a really important tool for Pedro Munhoz. Another one of his important kicks is the front stabbing kick, which causes your cardio to go down or for you to gas out as you keep accumulating those strikes. Pedro Munhoz probably has the best chin. He's got a granite chin at bantamweight, and Pedro Munhoz will take 3 shots to throw just 1 because he knows he can take your punch while you cannot take his. That's the kind of mentality he comes with. The fact that he's never been knocked out is a testament to the fact that his assumption is pretty close to being true. He has good defense, probably around 80%. He has good ground and pound. We've already talked about his killer guillotine chokes, so that makes Frankie wary of going for double legs. He defends predictable punches, but is susceptible to uppercuts. He just blocks his head in front of him, whereas the lower part remains open, where he could be countered with uppercuts. He's usually the guy who survives a firefight. Frankie Edgar does not want to get into a firefight with Pedro Munhoz. Now, talking about Frankie Edgar, he realizes primarily on his in and out movement, mixing his takedowns with elusive boxing to outpoint fighters. He's gotten a couple of knockouts here and there, but mostly he uses this strategy to earn decisions. He pressures the opponent, land combinations, and then gets out of the pocket. He has great cardio, and that is one of the X factors for this fight. If the fight goes into the later rounds 4 and 5, Frankie Edgar, who's faced much better competition than Pedro Munhoz at other weight classes, namely lightweight and bantamweight, is definitely going to have an experience advantage. However, Frankie Edgar will be stepping down from lightweight to featherweight for a few years, now to bantamweight. His frame seems to be perfect for that weight class, and he'll be at the same height as Pedro Munhoz, but it's definitely another X factor that Frankie has to watch. Frankie has only lost to competition that was either taller or of the same height as Frankie. He's never lost to someone who was of the same height or shorter than Frankie. Now, this is a very important point, because the longer, rangier fighters are able to establish their distance better than Frankie, and his movement cannot counteract all those angles that they can predict. Like Max Holloway, Brian Ortega, Jose Aldo, all were taller than Frankie Edgar. However, Pedro Munhoz is the same height as Frankie, so that can play as a deciding factor there. Another thing is Frankie's chin had been holding up really well till his last 4 fights. In the last 4 fights, he's been knocked out twice. And that's something that makes me a little worried, considering that Pedro Munhoz is such a big puncher. Frankie's usually the faster guy, but with the first bantamweight bout, I'm not 100% sure. Pedro Munhoz is probably going to be at the same speed or a little slower, but something that we need to watch out for. Now, as I mentioned, the X factors for this fight, the first one will be the small cage. Small cage usually restricts movement, and that will be an advantage to Pedro Munhoz. Frankie dropping to bantamweight, how is his hydration levels? People get knocked out easier when they're dehydrated, so that is something to watch out to. Pedro Munhoz has a granite chin and has amazing low kicks, which can probably hamper Frankie's movement. Frankie also has a deteriorating chin, so that's also something that we need to keep in mind. In summary, Edgar has a great chance to win a decision, but it seems like a tall order to me right now, because Pedro Munhoz has a great ground game, has power guillotines to defend takedowns, has great leg and body kicks to hamper Frankie's mobility, and eventually land that fight-ending blow. Overall, my pick is Pedro Munhoz. However, if we look at the odds, minus 250 for Pedro Munhoz, which is equivalent of giving him a 71% probability of winning the fight. Now, this is a little steep in my opinion. I would have been happy to bet on Pedro Munhoz had the bookies capped his winning probability to around 60 to 65%. But 71% is a little too high. So I will either use this for a parlay or a fight outcome specific bet, such as Pedro Munhoz by submission or knockout. However, Frankie Edgar by decision is also one of the probable outcomes. So I would say if you're betting on Pedro Munhoz for knocking out, put a little hedge on Frankie Edgar's decision as well.